All right, here we go. Welcome, everybody, and welcome to our stock market update. I say welcome because I don't know. Is it afternoon? Is it morning? We are in Germany, so it is afternoon. So anyhow, it is Monday, May 23rd, and we have a lot to talk about because, the Dow had its 8th-week losing streak. It's the first one since 1923. Yeah. So, it has been almost 100 years, so that's something to talk about. So what's happening here? What is causing this? We'll talk about this. What's happening with inflation rates? What's happening with China? President Biden is in China right now, or is in Asia, so we will not talk about this, how this is affecting the market. And of course, we will show you our current positions and how we are planning to trade today. But before we get started, if this is your first time here, I'm Markus Heitkoetter. This is my head coach, Mark Hodge, and together we have more than 47 years of trading experience. And every morning we sift through a mountain of news websites, newsletters, and reports, and then we take the most important news and go live right here, even in the afternoon, to tell you what's happening in the markets right now and how we trade the markets. If you're new to this channel, I know it can be a little bit overwhelming, but don't worry, we have a special video just for you that we will link to in the description, and that's a great place to get started. Mark, it's so good to be back. We took a 1-week break because you have been visiting Paris, and I visited my brother in Leipzig.
Yeah, Paris was wonderful. A great city, had a great time, and it sounded like you had a fun time too.
All right. Yeah, well, what was the weirdest? I want to show you the weirdest thing that I have seen. What was the weirdest thing that you have seen before we talk about what's happening in the markets?
Now, this might not be weird for some people, but I would say men dancing in sparkly suits.
Where were you?
Moulin Rouge.
Moulin Rouge. Okay. All right, I see. Okay. I got to show you the weird stuff that I've seen. Let me switch over here to the screen share. So this here was the view from the hotel room. So pretty cool. And you see there's a lot going on the right-hand side of the screen here. In fact, there's a tram actually happening. How are we doing here? Okay. So this is what was happening. It was actually the European Championship of tram bowling. And anyone be wondering, tram bowling, what does this mean? There's a tram that is hitting this ball that is hitting the pins. Let me show you what this looks like. So this is what it looked like.
Inches. When they fail the bowling.
Isn't that the most amazing thing ever? So it is a European Championship. So there's really tram drivers from all countries in Europe doing that.
Wow. That is odd. I've never seen such a thing.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about the markets.
Yeah.
Let's actually switch over here and see what's happening. So the S&P 500 on Friday, basically finished up 0.01%. But this doesn't tell the story.
Not at all. Not at all. And, we see that it was quite a week. Although we were slightly higher on Friday, digging outside or dipping into a bear market and closing just outside of it. But that 20% decline from those recent highs is definitely something that's been watched.
Yeah, so these were here. We had the recent highs. And as you said, intraday, we did dip in bear market territory, but then we closed at 19% down from the most recent highs. So just barely avoiding it. Also, if you look at a 5-minute chart of the S&P on Friday, lots of volatility here.
Sure.
The markets are just nervous as heck. So, from the top to the bottom, how much was that? It was like 3% or something like this. Yeah, 3.4% that the S&P was moving intraday. Very similar in the Dow and in the NASDAQ. And, the Dow right now, getting hammered. Having its 8th losing week. And you did a video on this, that this is something that is super rare. In fact, we haven't seen this since 1923 now.
That's a long time.
99 years.
And although the Dow is down significantly, it's not quite in that bear market range that the S&P has been teetering in. So the Dow is down 15.4%. So still has a little bit to go, but that back-to-back losses is great, or important to recognize.
Yeah, okay.
Not necessarily great.
So let's take a look at this. But also the yield. As of last week, the yield was coming down. This morning, slightly up, but overall it was just a broad sell-off all across the board. Whether we're looking at Bitcoin, whether we're looking even at gold, right? can bring up the gold futures here, and we see that they have been selling off just recently.
Recently started to pop higher, yeah. And you bring up a good point because the yield's been pulling back a little bit, but the S&P is also down. I think that 3% in the yield is something to watch, and that 4,000 level in the S&P, we're now trading below that, but I think that could be something to keep an eye on too, because if we get another pop back there, is that a double bottom?
Right.
We'll see.
Exactly. Okay, so let's talk about what's causing this. I mean, there's two main events, I want to say. Actually, three, right? So let's talk about this. So number one, it is the COVID situation in China.
And that is a concern and an issue with the record number of COVID cases with its current outbreak, crushing social and economic costs for China with the shutdown.
Right. So we have that going on. Then, of course, we have inflation worries and also interest rates, right? I mean, this is where inflation, now we know that it is hurting the economy, because that's the third thing that is moving the market. It's earnings. And I mean, last week, retailers like Walmart, like Target, they reported earnings and got hammered. Yeah, here we see Walmart, I mean, just sliding down, and this is a massive, massive slide for Walmart.
That's
I mean,
huge.
a fall here of almost 20%. Same for Target. I mean, huge slide. And then on Friday, the latest to join the party was ROST, department stores. I mean, they also said, okay, did you follow it? Did you see what happened there?
Honestly, I was at the Louvre.
Yeah. I mean, it was also disappointing earnings and disappointing guidance. So if you look at the earnings here, this is where we see they missed earnings just by 2 cents, but the guidance going forward, this is where they say, okay, there's slower earnings growth, consumers are not spending as much, and they are concerned. And this is where now we see, yes, inflation is hitting consumers.
Sure. And that's definitely something that's been a concern for the markets the last, really few quarters. And seeing that trickle into earnings is definitely a concern.
Right. So this is where the question is, how long will it last? I mean, when will this stop? And this is where we got to see, okay, we have seen this enough. Let's talk about the target rate probabilities that are factored in. And so the next meeting is June 15th. So we have, how many days? It shows it typically here. No, I mean, it's still a few days away. What is it?
3 weeks?
3 weeks approximately. So here is what's really interesting. So the probabilities, everybody's expecting the Fed to hike rates over the next 3 meetings, at least over the next 2 by 0.5 percentage point. So that's pretty big. And then we see that a slowdown is happening. So we see that market participants say, okay, so the September meeting, maybe they do 3/4, maybe they do 0.5 percentage point, maybe they go up back to 1/4. Because this is where everybody expects at some point inflation is peaking.
And that's the thing. I think that how long will this last, this volatility, this slide, and I wouldn't say that we're just going to slide until this meeting, but I think that this meeting is critical for traders to see what the Fed does, but more importantly, how the markets react to this next statement and the rate hike.
Right. I mean, talking about statements, this is where this week, looking at the economic calendar, we have a few important events coming up. So one thing that we do have is the FOMC meeting minutes on Wednesday.
And this is a wild card because you typically get the bulk of what's going to move the market in the actual statement and the press conference that follows the 2-day policy meeting. But here there could be something in the minute, something that was discussed that either scares the markets or makes traders feel more comfortable with what the Fed has in plan.
Right, and that's closely followed by the preliminary GDP. And it already came in for last quarter negative. And this is where all this talk about recession, right? So 2 negative quarters in a row would mean that we are in a recession. And this is why this will be very, very closely watched to see, okay, do we have another quarter of a down GDP?
Yeah, and so that's another red flag, something that traders are going to keep an eye on. And then there's another thing to watch on Friday as well.
Yeah, so on Friday we have the core PCE price index. This is another inflation report.
Yeah.
I mean, not as important as the CPI and
Right.
PPI, but right now, I mean, everybody is looking for hints that this inflation is peaking. So this is why these reports suddenly become red flag reports. I mean, a report that probably 6 months ago or a year ago, nobody would have really paid close attention to this. But right now, definitely a report that can move the markets.
Yeah, and the Fed is keeping an eye on a report like this.
Right. So, okay, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we have the biggies. We have a few companies reporting earnings. So we do have Costco, NVIDIA, Nordstrom, Macy's. So we still have retailers reporting earnings this week, most of them today and tomorrow, actually.
Zoom also after the bell today.
Yeah. All right, so let's take a look at what the markets are doing in pre-market trading, and then we'll show you the positions that we have and what exactly we are doing. So looking at the NASDAQ, I mean, in overnight trading, even in NASDAQ futures here, going to a 5-minute chart, we just see markets are nervous. Markets are just, at first it was up almost 1%, then it was pulling back. Right now, still pointing to a higher opening. So the NASDAQ lagging a little bit with 0.6%. The E-mini S&P up 1%, so pointing to a much stronger opening, and also the Dow. So it seems that there's a little bit of a rebound.
Yeah, and being in Germany, it was interesting because I'm normally not watching the markets at 3 a.m. when I live on the West Coast, but we were able to see futures up and then pulling back and now stabilizing a little bit. So it looks like we're going to have a pretty strong start, and we'll see what happens after.
Yeah, one of the reasons is because right now President Biden is visiting Asia, and he actually said that they will reevaluate the tariffs that have been imposed on China. And so this was a hint that maybe some of the tariffs might be lifted, and this is where market participants says, okay, good, I like that.
We'll see where it goes from there.
All right, let's take a look at our positions here, and let's see what's happening. So still in Blackstone. So Blackstone, super interesting, assigned at 110. On Friday, closing at 107, and this morning pointing to a higher opening. So we might be able to sell some calls here this morning, pretty much right into the open.
Yeah, it will be. There should be some real nice premium to collect at the assigned price or even higher. We'll look at that.
Caterpillar, this is a trade that I did on Friday. I sold the 190 puts expiring on May 27th, this Friday. You didn't take it because you are still exploring Paris.
I was at Saint-Chapelle.
Perfect. So Hog, also a trade that I took. I sold the 34 puts expiring on Friday. And on Friday, it was closing at 32.34. So this is where I am assigned in Hog right now. And I'll try to sell calls against it. That's part of the wheel. And I think this might be really good. It seems that also pre-market, they're pretty strong.
Could be a good day for selling calls.
All right. NVIDIA, this will be the interesting one because NVIDIA is reporting earnings in a couple of days. So on Wednesday, they're reporting earnings. So let's see what happens here. I got assigned at 195. Have been able to sell some calls, I believe, already. Right now, no positions trying to sell calls here this week.
And I'm in AMD, so I'm hoping that there's a nice move higher with NVIDIA and a little sympathy move with AMD.
All right, let's see. Then TPR. TPR a little bit all over the place. I mean, moved as high as 33. I'm assigned at 37, so that's also where I'm waiting for a pop to sell calls. And then last but not least, Visa. I did sell the 187.50 puts expiring May 20th. You did that as well, right? Did you trade Visa?
You know what? I did not. I wanted to be a little light because I knew I was going to be traveling.
Yeah. Okay. So they expired worthless. So this position no longer there. So right now, open positions in BX, Blackstone, Caterpillar, Harley-Davidson, NVIDIA, and TPR. So they're the 5 positions. All right. How are we doing on time?
I think we're doing great.
Okay. Perfect. So this is where right now with us here in the room are our mastermind members. So we'll start trading here in just a moment, live from Germany. I'm just trying to see if we can come back to you. Full screen. No, that's not the one. There's the right one. I was also having my stream there. Anyhow, so we will link to a few videos. I don't think I can do this right now. So, you know, this is an awesome YouTube video channel. Take a look at all the videos that we have for you. And then we'll see you again back tomorrow. I wanted to say morning, but it will be tomorrow afternoon for us. So anyhow.
Until then, happy trading. Everybody.
And now I need to find the finish button. There it is.